we're here for episode 31. And as always, we have Gunny Matheson,
Grow the show.
Joe Schmidt, Spanish,
31.
and then Italian, 31. And we're super thrilled to have Tommy Mannion tonight as our guest. You know, Tommy's probably as well known as anybody in the horse business and has done so much in so many different things. Pleasure horses, reining horses, cutting horses. I think it would be a hard time finding people that have been involved with more aspects of the horse industry than Tommy. So thanks for being here tonight. We're excited to have you.
Whenever I talked to Todd today, for some reason he thought there wasn't anybody else that's won more AQHA world titles. I don't know if that's still true or not, or if he has his facts straight. Which that wouldn't surprise me if Todd Summers was wrong.
I won't tell him you said that.
Yeah.
He'll see it.
Yeah, he watches the show.
He watches the show.
Sorry, Todd.
So do you know where you stand as far as world champions in the AQHA world?
I don't. I have 41 world championships and in 5 different divisions, and I don't know where that stands. But 5 different classes, and I just feel really blessed. And but as far as where it stands and what other people have won, I just can't say.
What are the divisions that you've won world championships?
what are the
in?
5?
What were the disciplines that you showed in?
It started with halter, Western pleasure, Western riding, trail. What is the 5th one? Western riding, trail.
Be the cutting?
No, my son won that.
Reining?
Reining.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you were, we've talked about it on the show before, but you were reserve champion of the reining fraternity, which is, incredible. And for as much as you've won in all the different stuff, you pretty much concentrate completely, or you do concentrate completely on the cutting horses, right? And have for some time.
Yes.
And Stan, you stood some of the greatest horse, probably arguably the greatest horse ever in the cutting horse business, right? Smart Little Lena.
Well, yes. We've been really blessed. If you're asking to name the horses, first of all, when we moved here in 1979, we were still in the halter and the pleasure and reining business. And our first entree into cutting was through Smart Little Lena.
Wow.
And what a great entree into the industry. And that was when Smart Little Lena was absolutely at his peak. And after standing him a couple of years, and we became familiar with the cutting horse people, mare owners, we decided that we would really like to zero in on the cutting and phase out of the halter and the pleasure business. And along with that, when we were back in Illinois, we had a lot of youth kids. In fact, that was one of the main parts of our business was a youth activity program. We did youth schools throughout the year at the Illinois State Fairgrounds. And so after we moved to Texas, we decided that we really wanted to cut back on the other parts of the industry and go into cutting. And we were just so fortunate to have Smart Little Lena. The timing was perfect. And
what was the deciding factor in that decision? Was it just business related?
We became I had done some cutting before I came to Texas. But not to the extent as cutting is known in Texas. Mm-hmm. And the more I was exposed to the cutting here at this level, it just intrigued me.
Cool.
And so we went from Smart Little Lena to Highbrow Cat and Smooth as a Cat and so on and so forth. But the transition became easier because of Smart Little Lena.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you have Smart Little Lena, you're established.
Yeah.
I mean, then it's easy to. I think I would assume once you've had Smart Little Lena, it's easy to get really great horses from then on.
And we just met, as we met the people and the mare owners and the contestants, we just, we wanted to really pursue that part of the industry that we hadn't really been exposed to prior to moving here. So it was a new frontier for us.
So where was Smart Little Lena in his career when you got him?
Smart Little Lena had just won the Versatility. We moved here in November. And the following year, he won the Versatility in 1982. And so in 1983 was his first breeding season. And they brought him to us. We started breeding him that year. He won the Super Stakes, second leg of the Triple Crown. And then he won the Derby, which was the third leg of the Triple Crown. And it was just a phenomenal experience.
And he was the first cutting horse to do that?
He was the second.
Second. Which one was the
And I'm
first
not
one?
sure who the first one was. I don't know.
So how does that work? What was the process in that? How did they decide to stand him at your house? You're not one of those people that were really established. I'm sure they could have stood him anywhere that they wanted to. How did you get him? Did they contact you? Did you contact them?
They contacted me, but it was Haynes Chatham was the breeder of Smart Little Lena. And we had a little history before we moved to Texas. Haynes had called me one day in Illinois, and he was like maybe 20, 21 years old. He comes from a real wealthy family. I didn't know him, and he called me and he said, I'm looking for a reining horse. So I invited him to come. I said, I've got a nice mare. So he comes to Springfield. He buys this mare, and she's the honor roll horse of the year that year. And 2 years later, we moved to Texas. I had never had any dealings with Haynes after that. I'm sitting at my office one day and I'm reading the local paper. It's about 3 pages long. And it says, local horseman, local horse wins NCHA Versatility, Haynes Chatham. Wow, that's an odd name. That's got to be the same guy. And so I find out his address and I send him a plant, a congratulatory plant. And the next day after he got the plant, he calls me. And he said, we're going to stand him this year. Would you be interested? Absolutely. So we have a meeting the next day. He sets up a meeting with Bill Freeman, who was his co-owner and the trainer of Smart Little Lena. We have a 30-minute meeting at our ranch, and that was it. We consummated our deal, and that was in December. And he came 2 months later, and he spent. Smart Little Lena was shown a total of 8 times in his life. He won $720-some thousand. But after he won the Derby, which completed the Triple Crown voyage, then he never left our place. And we had to put him down when he was 32. And so he was there from the time he was 5 until 32.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
And you just never know where it's going to end up, right? From meeting Haynes through another business deal in Illinois, 1,000 miles from here. And, several years later.
What a small world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
the best plant you ever bought.
Yeah, yeah, that was a smart
You know,
deal.
there's only one thing that really caught my ear about that whole story is I bet Tom has never sent
Sent a
anybody
plant.
plant.
Yeah,
Have you?
Probably
Let alone
not.
a gift.
not if
You
someone
sent-
for winning.
You sent
You
gifts,
know.
Tom, to anybody?
Well, I'm not a big gift giver. No,
No.
my
No.
wife could attest
It
to
was-
that.
Yeah,
I'm a firm believer in the fickle finger of fate. And it just so happened that,
That's cool.
I mean, of our relationship from a one-day meeting 2 years prior, now granted, he did well with the horse he bought from us.
right.
And so he was receptive to our friendship and reigniting that friendship. And just what a great reunion.
Yeah,
It was.
that was cool.
All right, make a
Very
note, Manny. We're gonna start
Sending plants. That's right.
Get on,
That's
the,
right.
get on the Tom McCutcheon plant mailing list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Email
sure.
Chelsea Schneider.
I'm not afraid to steal an idea.
Yeah,
If it's a
exactly.
good one.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So let's go
Yeah.
back. You started. You were raised in Illinois,
Yes. No, I was raised in Missouri.
in Missouri,
Yes.
and then
Family was in the horse business, or
No.
no? How did you evolve to horse business?
My dad was a car mechanic, and my mother was a school teacher. And we came from very, very meager beginnings. And but there's no horse background no history in my background.
Oh,
So the rumor has it, and I don't know, I've heard this forever about you. Were you at one point in time, were you a police officer or a detective or?
My dad
something?
was.
Your dad was.
Uh-huh. And in a suburb in St. Louis, in fact, that's the way he and my mother met. He stopped her and gave her a speeding ticket. And it just so happened that through that process, they discovered that they had been born and raised like 20 miles apart in a suburb of St. Louis.
Right.
And so then he, at some point, quit being a police officer and became a car mechanic. And my mother was a school teacher.
Huh, that's interesting. So what was your start? Were you into the horses right away as a kid?
You know, I was, and you know, kids, as you're growing up, people always ask you, what are you going to do when you grow up? And more often than not, they'll say, well, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. And that was never a hard question for me to answer. There was never a decision, never a question that I was going to be in the horse business. Roy Rogers was my hero. And my heart is still rearing up, but there was just never a decision. I mean, everybody asked me, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to be a horse trainer. And so...
And that came from Roy Rogers and watching TV.
And so, as I said, my mother was a school teacher. My dad was a mechanic, and they supplied me with a little weekend horse that we would run the barrels on and play day kind of horses. And we did reining and barrel racing and pole bending. And so, of course, there's a law you have to go to school till you're 16. And so I decided that I didn't want to go to school. And I just, to my mother's chagrin and disappointment, I told her I didn't want to go to school. So she said, well, it's a state law. You have to go to school till you're 16. So school started when I was 16. I'm sorry.
when you
Let
were
me back up. When I was 15, and I refused to go. And if I had been my mother or my dad, I would have kicked my butt up around my neck like a turtleneck. But anyway, I refused to go, and they were real good friends of the county sheriff. His name was Bill Miller. So my mother thought that she could scare me or make me reconsider, so that she calls the sheriff, and the sheriff comes and has dinner with my family at night after the first day of school when I was 15. and he says, Tommy says, I understand you don't want to go to school. And I said, no, I don't. I didn't see any reason why I should be out reading and writing when I could be out riding, R-I-D-I-N-G, right? So he said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to be here in the morning. I'm going to pick you up. I'm going to take you to school. And he did, with the car with the light on top. He didn't have the light on, but he had the cop car. Embarrassed me bad. So that night, I come home, I packed my clothes in a paper sack. And our little town where I lived was like probably 3,000 people, 3,500. And I packed my sack, my clothes in a sack. Next morning I get up, I tell my mom and dad, goodbye, I'll see y'all tonight. And I go to the bus station. Everyone knows each other in this little town. So I tell them that I want a ticket to Mahia, Texas. A friend of ours had taken me to the Fort Worth Stock Show the year before when I was 14, just as a friend. And we just sat up in the stands, and I met this man that lived at Mahia, Texas, and very, very nice gentleman. He's a rancher, and I said, boy, and he's a roper, and he said, I said, I'd really like to learn to rope. And so out of kindness, he just said, well, you know, after school, you know, some summer you want to come down, why come on down? And just out of kindness, not dreaming I would do that. So the lady at the bus depot calls my mother. She goes in the other room. I find this out later. She calls my mother. She said, Dorothy, Tommy's down here, and I think he's running away from home. So my mother, so she says, well, where's he trying to go? And he says, Mahia, Texas. My mother says, okay, go ahead and I know where he's going. Go ahead and sell him the ticket. So I ride the bus to Dallas. So I go to this man's place. His name is Mannion. And I'm there. He's gone when I get there. But I'm sitting on the porch in the swing when he and his wife get home. Now, he already knew that I was coming because my mother called ahead. And so, but he never tells me, oh, yeah, you know, so I said, you know, you invited me down, and here I am. So he tells my mother, which I find out later, go ahead and let him stay. It's fine. We'll take care of him, blah, blah, blah. So when he finds out, I think he thought I would get homesick. Well, after about 6 months, I wasn't homesick. But by then I was calling home, and I was informing my mother where I was. So pretty soon, Mr. Miles, Manuel Miles, we're at a restaurant, and he goes over and he talks to the sheriff in Mahia, Texas, and he comes back to the table and he said, Tommy, you're welcome to stay, but if you're going to stay, you have to go to school. So, well, I don't want to go to school. So I said, well, if I'm going to go to school, I might as well go back home. So I go back home, and I get a job in a shoe factory. By then I'm 16, I'm legal, right? So I work in a shoe factory to 16. I joined the Army when I was 17.
Joined the Army when you're 17.
I was 17. And went to California. And then when I came back, then I got my first job.
How long were you in the Army?
Riding horses, 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yep.
So you're around 20 when you started back.
Right. So I came back, and I got my first riding job with a man, not a trainer, he was an owner, in Houston, Missouri, south of Springfield, Missouri. And he was just really, really a great mentor, not as a rider or as a trainer, but as a friend, a father figure, and a businessman. And so I stayed there for 2 years. And then I had an opportunity to come to Pacific, Missouri, which is up by St. Louis, and take a training job on my own, where I just rented stalls. Yeah. And so then I was there for 2 years, and I don't know where you want me to stop with
No,
the
you're
story,
No,
but
great.
this is
Well,
interesting.
So then, after 2 years there, we had a customer that lived in Springfield, Illinois, and he suggested that I move to Springfield to the Illinois State Fairgrounds. He could get me established there. And so we did. We moved to Springfield, Illinois, and I was there for 13 years. We rented the Illinois State Fairgrounds. It was a great place to train, a wonderful place.
And what was your primary business then?
I really didn't have a primary direction.
So we're talking from
20
20
years
to
old.
33, 22 to 35. You were in there?
Yes,
Okay,
when I moved to Springfield, I was like 21.
right.
And so we developed a clientele with kids, and it evolved. And we didn't specialize in any one direction. We incorporated everything. We had halter horses, we had reining horses, we had pleasure horses, but we had kids, and we developed those kids in the youth activity program. And of course, then from there, they would want to buy horses. And so we developed a clientele that would purchase horses, and we were there for 13 years.
Yeah. And so you did a little bit of everything. Were you into the reiners at that point yet?
Yes. In 1964, prior to moving to Springfield, Illinois, I had a customer that had a mare called Annie Blitzen, and she was the honor roll reining horse that year. That was before they had the world show.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the world champions were decided by the honor roll, how many points you got. And so she won it that year. Her name was Annie Blitzen in 1964.
And which year were you second in the reining fraternity?
That would have been, I'm just really speculating here. Certainly after we moved to Springfield, I'm going to say we moved here in 1979. I'm going to say probably late 70s.
Late 70s.
Yes.
And was Sam somebody telling us was that a horse of Paul Horn's, or was that a horse that I can't remember what the
I
story
thought
was.
Sam said you got him from Paul Horn.
No. We had a horse that Paul Horn had, but it wasn't that particular horse that I had in the fraternity.
Gotcha.
The horse I had in the fraternity was actually had the beginning on the racetrack.
Oh, wow.
And which back then we used to get several horses off the racetracks to come back and try to make like supreme champions from where they had to have a certain number of racing points, a certain number of performance points, a certain number of halter points.
Gotcha.
And so that was, we were in that phase.
Gotcha.
But this particular horse, it was a mare, and she had been on the racetrack as a 2-year-old.
And you trained her
Yes.
to get ready to go to the fraternity. So
Yes.
after the reining fraternity, did that push you a little bit more clientele wise into the reining horse business, or do you just still stay with everything?
We stayed pretty versatile. If I had to just say what phase in the horse business did we venture off into, it was always an all-around versatile horse. That was the main demand then. We found at that time it was hard to make a living just training horses. So we found that the more we bought and sold, the better living we could have. And so we stayed pretty versatile, and we catered a lot to kids. We had youth activity camps at Springfield, Illinois. We had 2 a year, and we took 50 kids at a time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of kids.
For a week at a time. But it was a great facility because the dormitories, they ate, slept, and rode right there on the fairgrounds. Once they came, they never left for a week.
Right.
And So
So if
we-
you got 50 kids, at that point, you already had to have your name in the industry had to be at that point already pretty strong, huh?
I don't know how to answer that. We had a good clientele. I'll say that.
And had you won any world championships to that point
No.
other than
Just the honor roll.
the honor roll?
Right. And by then, the World Championship show was evolving. The concept of they was kind of getting away from the honor roll title to the World Championships. And the first World Championship show that I remember going to was at Louisville, Kentucky. And we had 3 world champions there. And so that kind of whetted our spirit, I might say, our appetite
Right.
to do more and more and start really going toward more and more world champions if we could win them.
Right.
So by the time you were even second in the fraternity, it was, was that mare? Did you have her pegged to be a reiner, or was she not fitting into your other molds that you had as far as making her a more versatile horse?
The man that owned her really wanted a reining horse, and he wanted a reining fraternity horse.
Gotcha.
And so through the process of elimination, she evolved into our pick.
Gotcha.
And
Do you remember what second place in the fraternity paid?
I don't.
I bet it wasn't
I know.
much.
Yeah, I bet
Yeah.
it wasn't much.
Yeah.
That's for
Eight-
sure.
eight- $800
We should have
bucks.
looked it up on
Yeah.
NRHA. I bet they have it in the database.
But when you
Yeah.
talk about that, I think back when you were second in the fraternity, it still wasn't an era where you could specialize. I mean,
No,
you still had to do everything in that era. I think it's really the last probably 20 years where people are really started to specialize.
Well, I think we're in an era, and have been for a long time, of specialization. And back then, our if we're looking toward buying and selling, the versatile horse that could do several events
Would sell.
would sell. And one of the best horses I ever had, Mandy's dad trained. A man by the name of, his name is David Kramer from Springfield, Illinois. Bought this gelding. He was a bay gelding. I can't remember his name, but he bought him for his daughter. And my wife and I won the versatility on him that year, versatility class at the Congress. And
Rusty Buck.
what was it?
Rusty Buck.
That's exactly right. What a memory. So, but your dad, Mandy, trained him, and he was not a great mover. He was not a great athlete, but your dad had him trained to his absolute peak. And the only thing that we did when we got him was, for your viewers that don't know what the versatility class is at the Congress, it's made up of 4 classes: the English pleasure, Western pleasure, reining, and bell racing. So your dad had trained him in all of the aspects except the bell racing. And I was fortunate because that had kind of been my heritage back when I was a teenager, and even before that, I did bell racing. So it kind of came natural, and all I did was apply that to him, to his phase of the training, and he was a superstar. But your dad did all the training, did a miraculous job.
I showed that horse when I was like 4 years old. I was little.
Yeah.
Huh.
Just in case you wanted me to jog your memory, you won $453 for being second in the fraternity. That year.
Oh, wait. Wonderful.
453
Yeah.
up.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Made a ranch payment, didn't it?
Yeah.
But back then, the real demand for horses as far as buying and selling was the versatile youth activity horse. And then, if you had a horse that was really highly specialized like a halter horse, that's where he stayed, But when you got into performance, we wanted a horse that could do more than one event.
You know, that class, that doesn't exist anymore, does it?
No,
And that was a real crowd favorite at the Congress. I can remember as a kid going there.
Yep.
It was fun to watch because let's see who can do. It was fun and funny because to watch some of the pleasure horse guys try and run the barrels, I mean, it was awful, you know. And then I think when you guys like Tommy that had done everything and had such a diverse background could just flat out show a lot.
Yeah.
You know, in the different events.
I was just fortunate because as a kid, that's what I did, you know, and so it kind of came natural, that aspect, you know. But when you take a horse like Tim had trained that had all of those basics, he wasn't a great horse, but he was trained to the absolute best. You know, it just made my job so much easier.
Yeah, you can just do anything with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
the one thing that I would ask is Todd, when he talked about you, he said you were one of the guys that was ahead of their time in grooming and how you presented your horse. He said you were very immaculate with how you took care of the animals and the hair coat and how you presented them. Do you remember being that way? Do you remember having a mindset to be that way, or?
I found that it was easier getting back if you accept the premise that our livelihood was derived from buying and selling. You never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Yep.
And when you lead that horse out and he's slick and he's pretty and he's fit, you know, you've set the tone. And so I just found that was a great advantage
Gotcha.
to buying and selling. You know, it was just part of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think that guys like Todd, and I look at some of the people that have worked for you. I mean, we've got a list of them here, and you know, it's crazy the amount of people you turned out that are
Still in the
so
horse
well
business.
known in the, you know, Pete Kyle, Mark Chestnut, John Dean, Doug Carpenter, Todd Summers, Troy Green, Diane Eppers, Wayne Halverson, Kim Dean, Bob Majerus. I mean, and I'm sure there's more than that. You know, I mean,
Sure,
it's
there's
just
a bunch you've forgotten about too.
that's just off the top of our head. I mean, it's a pretty impressive group.
But you know, Tom, I have to say that we had some great, all these people you just named, the great people, and they were such an asset to and helped us, my wife and I, with the success that we had. And we had the team spirit to where when we won something, it wasn't me winning it, it was us. You know, there's no I in the word team. And so all of these guys you just mentioned, they were first class horsemen, but we had the team spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can tell you stories after story about what all of those guys put into the degree of success that we had. And they were just such a great asset, and we were blessed to have them.
Yeah.
Not only have them, when I say have them, I don't mean as employees. I'm talking about it as a team and as friends.
No, I get it. I mean, Joe and Gunny both worked for me, and I mean, it really shows the importance of how good help really helps an operation. Because after they were gone, I mean, we went up a whole nother level.
I knew that was coming too. I did. I heard it. And I'm like, this is BS again.
He could have talked all day and not said that.
Yeah. God.
I gotta go pee. Can we take a break?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I've had it.
I've gone from wanting to needing to.
Yeah.
No problem.
Shit.
You know, it's
The
fun.
fuck.
Are we still rolling?
Yeah.
It's fun to, I mean, like the stuff you don't know. I mean, everybody knows Tommy Mannion, but the stuff you don't know of how it started. And then I mean, I worked for Jim Dudley, and we went to a lot of quarter horse shows, and you know, you see Tommy Mannion now and established and elite. But you think of the miles that he's put on his trucks and trailers going down the road.
Yeah.
Not glamorous.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Just
work.
horse showing.
Just work.
Yeah.
beating yourself up, grinding it out. It's it's raining.
Well, with 50 kids, doing the kid camp thing and just showing horses, showing and selling horses.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, no, that's very cool.
No, it's fun having him here and to hear the stories. And I'm sure we'll hear some more. And we're gonna probably go a little long tonight.
We're probably going over.
I don't care.
No, I don't either. What's most interesting is I don't know much about him.
Yeah.
Just because he's been in the cutting world and I've been riding reining horses, so I've driven by his place 1,500 times and seen that Smart Little Lena and Smooth as a Cat sign out front and the stucco fence. But other than that, I didn't know him.
Yeah, I think I picked a horse up there one time. But yeah, I only drove by the front or the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've been in the barns.
It's cool to hear those stories. And
yeah.
Like I said before, I've done 200 hours in the truck with Todd. And he's told some stories, and I forget all of them. But he's told some stories.
Because you don't listen to Todd.
Generally, just go, yeah. Todd, I gotta
Sure,
go.
Todd.
Yeah, I gotta go, and you're in the truck with him.
Love you, Todd.
Yeah, we do. We do love you, Todd.
Yeah, we do love Todd.
Yeah.
Most of us.
Most of the time.
Yeah. I like Todd. But it's just impressive. You look down the list of people that work for him that are stellar.
Well, and they're still kind of going.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that Melissa Kramer rode with him because Melissa Van Dorp is who bought Rusty Buck from.
Melissa Van Dorp bought that horse?
That's who Melissa Van Dorp. Melissa Kramer is who. That's who got Rusty Buck.
Rusty Buck lived to be 35
Oh,
some odd
yeah.
years old with no teeth.
Yeah,
And
he
like,
lived at my dad's place
Yeah.
for a little while when Ruben and Melissa were in between places. Yeah,
Oh, really?
that's who got him from us. is Melissa.
I mentioned your name. I got a better seat
yeah.
in there.
Yeah. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
We were talking about, it's easy now because you're an icon in the industry, and that's not anything you kind of wanted to steer away from that tonight, but you are. I mean, there's no two
question
ways about it. There's very few people that have accomplished more, but what's forgotten when you're at this point in your career, and you drive in the fancy Mercedes, and you got the big place, and you had the great studs, and you've got all that. It's easy to forget that road and how many miles you've put on an old truck, and how many times you've been getting horses ready in the middle of the night, and how many days you were showing in a dusty old crappy outdoor pen in the Midwest when it was 105 degrees and
25 degrees.
or 25 degrees. I mean, it's easy to forget the road there, right?
Maybe. But, I'm just going to say, I have a bad habit. I like to eat, so I had to work back then. But
I love eating too.
I feel so blessed.
They like fat shaming me a lot, so you teed it up for me, so they wouldn't, okay? Shut up.
I feel so blessed. The horse business has been a blessing to me and my family. And I feel so fortunate to be able to make a living doing something I really enjoy. I could think of nothing worse than to get up in the morning good to go to work, and most people do.
So all those miles down the road weren't work for you, basically
No.
what you're saying. You loved it.
No. If your job is what you like, it's not a job.
Yeah.
And I just and it's something, I don't know, it was inborn from the beginning that there was never any doubt that my livelihood was going to be my life was going to be in the horse business. And so there wasn't a question of if, but how. And I was just really, really blessed. And you know, I've had great, I don't like to use the word employees. I've had great helpers. But I'm a firm believer in the old adage that I owe my success to gather people around me who know more than I do.
Yeah.
And
Tom does that too.
does he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's why
You're
we.
living proof.
That's what we were saying.
You're
That's why we
living
worked
proof.
for
Me
him.
and Joe have helped him do some
Yeah.
bumps and bumps.
Yeah.
But I have had.
You're welcome.
Finally,
Yeah.
You're welcome.
finally, we hear from you guys.
That's right.
He spoke right up, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for that, Tommy. Thank you. Thank you for putting it. Thank
Have
you
that
for teeing it up for
perspective.
me.
You and I rehearsed it, so
Yeah.
it's a many times, right?
I forgot to tell you, I did talk to Tommy on Wednesday.
Yeah.
But it's just the horse business has been a blessing to us, and we've just had so many people that have helped us along the way, and again, we've just it was the people around us that knew more than we did, and they contributed to our success.
Yeah. Well,
Nobody knows more than Tom McCutcheon, so
No,
that's
I mean-
never happened to him, Tommy.
I know some of these people really well that work for you, and most of them didn't know more than you did.
That's right.
But we-
Yeah, several of them.
Hey, I want to tell you a funny story about Pete Kyle, and I don't know how many of your viewers know Pete Kyle.
Oh, yeah, just about everybody, yeah.
We love to hear
He's a
Tom.
straight arrow.
Yeah.
And when he came to work for us back in Illinois, he hadn't been any place, I don't think, out of New Mexico. So one night, I get a phone call about 3:00 in the morning. He said, "Tommy, I'm in jail." Oh no! I thought he was kidding. And he says, "Yeah, I'm in jail." And, right? Come on, I'm in bed, Pete. And he said, "No, I'm really in." So I said, "What did you do?" Well, he said, "Here, I'm going to let the policeman tell you." So the policeman gets on. It was Pete's birthday. And he's probably going to shoot me for saying this.
Wow.
So he had gone to some bars, this in Springfield, and he decided when he came out of the bars, there were a lot of these cars back then, the radio aerials screwed in to the hoods, not the hoods, but the doors.
Top
You
of
know.
the fender, yeah.
He screwed it in. Well, he decided he would take a bunch of those off. So he walked along and he had an arm full of radio antennas. Just I don't know why. And so anyway, well, naturally the police stopped him. So, but funny story, knowing Pete, how straight arrow. I mean,
Apparently not that straight.
no.
No,
Stealing antennas.
But I've been around Pete a number of times where he's overindulged,
Yeah.
and
And that night,
Pete gets a little different.
That night it was his birthday and he celebrated. He
Oh,
got as
yeah.
many of those
kidding.
radio airs as he could. You know, I mean, never get another chance.
Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me at all.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I'd never heard
So,
that.
Let's fast forward then. So from there, moving down to Texas, the place you're at now, that's the original place you bought in Texas? You've been there since
Yes.
since you've been here.
Now, what made you make the move down here?
We raised a horse, stallion. He was by Impressive. His name was Pretty Impressive, and he developed into the best producing son of Impressive. And when he was a yearling, let me back up. When I say we, my wife and customers, horses, we would move to Florida in the wintertime. And we would go there in November, and we would make the circuit, West Palm Beach, Gold Coast circuit, and then we'd go to Arizona to the Sun Circuit, and then we'd go to Toronto, Canada, and then we would wind up back home. So we left the stud colt that we raised. He was a yearling with a man to take care of, and he turned him out one day in a pen. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything I wouldn't have done. And he fell and broke on the slick ground, and he fell and broke his knee. So when he healed back, that knee wound up straight, frozen. He couldn't exercise. He could walk, and that's it. But he was a beautiful horse, beautiful horse. So a friend of mine, his name is Charlie Dobbs, and he lived there close, and he loved that horse. And so he said, why don't you let me, but he got to be 3. And he said, let me take him and stand him for a year. We thought he'd breed 20 or 30 mares because he couldn't go to the horse shows. But he was such a specimen. His physique was phenomenal. So just word of mouth. Anyway, he bred 144 mares that year.
Holy cow.
And just by word of mouth, because we couldn't take him and show him.
Yeah.
Charlie Dobbs, he had mares tied to trees. I mean, he didn't have a place like that to house that many mares. And he had mares tied to trees, to fences, whatever. So we said, wow, we wanted to move out of Illinois. By then, the weather was terrible. So we said, this is our ticket out of town. This horse has become so popular. Let's move to Texas. So Chip Nost, Dave Page, they all lived in our area. So they suggested us, hey, why don't you come to North Texas and look? So they're really the reason that we moved. And our place was a catfish farm.
Really?
Didn't have any fences. All it had was water tanks where they raised catfish. And so no trees, no nothing. So we bought it and began building 6 months before we moved, and to where we could move. And we built a show barn, breeding barn, motel, and then we moved, and we continued to add on to that. But that's how we come to move to Texas. And so when we moved, we were still in the halter / performance horse.
And was your stud
That's cool.
was he standing in Illinois when he bred that many mares, or did you?
Illinois.
Okay.
He was a 3-year-old.
Yep.
And when we saw how popular he had become, through no fault of our own. I mean, we hadn't done anything. We couldn't show him. It was just word of mouth. But he was such a specimen, physique-wise.
Yeah.
So we said, well, great. Let's move to a place that has a better climate, more conducive to breeding. You couldn't stand a stud on the Illinois State Fairgrounds. And so he was our entree into Texas to moving. And then when he became 6, then we had to put him down.
So when you moved to Texas and got into the cutters, that really, through your whole career, ironically, that's the first time you ever specialized in any one thing.
Yes, correct.
All the things you've done and all that, then kind of you just fell into that, and that's the one thing you specialized.
We veered off into the cutting industry.
Yeah. And
Yep.
How do you feel like, so all you did before and all you want, I would assume that when you started into the cutting horse industry, that was probably financially one of the best things you ever did.
It was one of the scariest things that we did prior to that, because we moved to Texas, made a major investment with a crippled stud that we were looking to pay.
A stud with a frozen knee.
And that horse, really what happened to his demise is because he had limited exercise, his tendons in his front legs would contract. And over a period of a year, he would walk on his toes because he had no elasticity in his front suspensories. So we had a specialist vet that would come back and do surgery on him at Texas A&M on those suspensories and would let him back down. So the last year they did the surgery. When they got up from surgery, instead of being up on his toes, he was down on his ankles. He overcorrected and he tore all the blood vessels loose behind his knee. So now this horse that we came here with that was going to pay for our place is now gone. It was a scary moment.
Right.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And so Smart Little Lena, actually the year before that happened, he had come on the scene, and what a parachute and a rescue he was for us,
No
you
kidding.
know. And so that was really,
Wow.
again, our entree into the cutting is all a matter of timing. And then we veered off in cutting exclusively.
And how many mares did Smart Little Lena breed those first?
Okay,
Several.
we were limited to the number of mares we bred because he was a syndicated horse with 90 shares. He could only breed 90 mares.
So you
Now-
had to be a shareholder, and that's
Had
the
to be a
only way
shareholder.
grow. Okay.
Yeah. So we had 63 people that owned 90 shares.
Did you own any of those shares?
I owned 2.
Okay.
Right. And so, but what really made him work was, I'm going to say after 2 years, the breedings were bringing 15,000 to 17,500.
And that, what year was that?
That would have been after he won the futurity. That would have been in 1983, 84,
That's incredible.
84.
Wow.
That's incredible.
So, so we had customers that would invest in shares. I'm just going to give you an example of how this worked. From Smart Little Lena's beginning, humble beginnings. When he went to the futurity, Bill Freeman had told Haynes Chatham, he's the best colt I've ever ridden. So they decided, they come up with this plan to syndicate him for $1,750 a share. They were only able to sell 15 shares.
Wow.
Jeez.
So this story I'm telling you now comes from a banker that bought into him. He said, I was at the concession stand, and this was after the first go around of the futurity. He said, I heard Bill Freeman tell Haynes Chatham, he said, Haynes, this is the best horse I've ever ridden. So he said, I'm standing back there trying to get a Coke. And he said, I hear him make the statement. And he said, I'm thinking that horse got to be worth $1,750 a share. I go back up into the cheap seats, and he says, I immediately decide I'm going to buy a share. This is a banker. Anyway, from that point, through the futurity, then he wins the futurity. Then he goes to the Super Stakes, and they release 20 more shares at 50,000. He went from 1,750 to 50,000 from the futurity to the Super Stakes. They sold 10. Then he goes and he wins the Derby, and they sell the rest of them for 75,000. He went from 1,750 to 75,000 in 9 months.
Wow.
And they sold 40 shares for 75,000.
Right.
Holy cow.
So that's how the evolution of Smart Little Lena.
That 1750
Jeez.
might have been the best
deal.
in the history of the horse business.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people that gave 1,750. The shares got to 50,000. They sold out,
Yeah.
only to learn 2 months later they were a little early.
Right.
Wow.
You know, but anyway, so talks to the limit of mares that he could breed. Of course, now the concept is totally reversed. You breed as many mares as you can breed. But so we bred 90 mares, and the syndicate voted to breed 10 extra mares to pay for all expenses. The advertising, the this, the that.
Right.
And so you get to 100 max. And that's the most he ever bred.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible with only breeding 100 mares
Only
compared to what the studs breed now.
So the next
It's unbelievable.
the
what
next
they want.
superstar that came along was Highbrow Cat. And he was out of a Smart Little Lena mare. And Jack Wagner owned him. And he used the reverse psychology. He bred as many mares as he could breed. The first year he brought him to us, he bred 12 mares. The year before he brought him, he bred 12 mares. And he had some colts, a few colts that did well in the sale as 2-year-olds, and momentum picked up. And we had Highbrow Cat for 6 years. So about the third year, he was breeding 250 mares. So but Little Lena had brought so much of that clientele there, you know. Plus, Highbrow Cat was out of a Little Lena mare, you know. So we were just so blessed to just timing is everything in life, you know. And I think we're living proof of that. That everything just happened right
at the right time.
Do you guys know that the late great friend of ours, Mr. Joe Hayes, was the owner of the Smart Little Lena?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I think Joe Hayes had the first.
Really?
It was either the first or the third Triple Crown champion.
No, you're thinking of Joe Heim.
Joe Heim.
Joe
You're
Heim.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
Joe Heim. Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was that Doc's Okie Coyote.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's exactly right.
I thought he was the year after Smart Little Lena.
And I think you're right.
He only lived for a year or two after that, and then he died.
That's right.
But
That's
Joe
exact-
Hayes
Joe Hayes trained reining horses.
trained
Yeah.
reining horses, very well known in the reining horse
Yeah.
business. And I remember
He had a Smart Little Lena share.
and I don't know when he
Yeah.
acquired it because I'm sure they changed hands a lot over
Yeah.
the years. Huh?
They did up to a certain point. And then when they got to be 75,000, they didn't change very often.
Right.
The people would sell their breedings, you know, for 15,000 or 17,500, you know. And so it's quite a story with that little horse. He just,
Could anybody sell a share to anybody, or did there have to be some approval to?
they
sell
had
a
to
share?
first offer it to the shareholders.
Okay.
So that was done through our office. They would call and say, hey, I want to sell my share. Okay, so a letter would go out to all the shareholders. So-and-so wants to sell his share. And if more than one said, I want to buy it, then there was a drawing. And if no one picked that share up, say it was too expensive or whatever, then it could revert back to the owner and he could sell it for whatever he wanted to.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was a unique concept at the time, and it wouldn't work today,
Right.
Yeah.
but it worked at the time.
Right. So when they offered it to the other shareholders, it was at a set price.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Interesting.
And after Smart Little Lena, let's say Highbrow Cat or Smooth as a Cat, how much interest did you try to get in any of those studs in owning them?
We I didn't have, there was no shares available in Highbrow Cat. They didn't syndicate him. It was just breedings. But we had, before Highbrow Cat, we had Highbrow Hickory.
Okay.
Haynes and I bought him together when he was 3. And so I left that out. So it went from Smart Little Lena, Highbrow Hickory, Highbrow Cat.
Gotcha. And Highbrow
Smooth as a
Hickory
Cat.
was the dad to
Highbrow-
Highbrow Cat?
Yes, out of a Little Lena mare.
Gotcha.
Yes. But like I say, it's the philosophy has just changed, you know, dramatically now. But at that particular time, the architect of the syndication was right on target.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now they breed 400 mares to
Yep.
metallic cat every year, don't they?
Yep.
I mean,
That's crazy.
So
as many as they can.
was to your recollection, was Smart Little Lena one of the first syndicates, or were there other syndicates, and that was that a groundbreaker, or was that already in place?
No, I think that was a groundbreaker.
And then to have it work so well.
So well.
Yeah.
absolutely. And there were some horses that tried it later, but by then they didn't have a standout like Little Lena was at the time. He was only shown a total of 7 times, I think I told you. 8 times. And we have a plaque there at the ranch that shows where he was shown and what he marked every go around and what he won. And it's really unique to see that, the last thing he won, the last thing he was shown was he won, they paid $100,000 in cash. What was the name of that event? It was like, the name of it didn't have anything to do with the Triple Crown. It was like the it was the Masters. That's what they called it, the Masters. And so he won that for $100,000, and
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we still have the briefcase that they presented that $100,000 in. It was empty. It was empty by the time I got it, but we've still got the briefcase.
And is he buried on that place there?
We cremated him, and I'll tell you a hair-raising thing that happened. My wife, she's an animal fanatic, and every night we have little dogs, and she would walk those little dogs to the stud barn. The stud barn is the closest building to our home. And so every night she would walk those little dogs, and she'd go in the stud barn, and she would feed those studs cookies or whatever. Little Lena was in first stall on the right. So she would always feed him first, and she'd go around. And if she ever walked by him and happened to feed the next horse, he raised holy hell. I mean, he would paw and squall. After you come back and feed him, he's fine. But I want to be first, right? So they developed this relationship. So Little Lena, as he got older, when he was 28 years old, we had 132 pregnancies. That's counting rebreeds, the 90 breedings we sold. Right. So we had 132 pregnancies. And he began to have, as he got older, he began to have trouble getting up. And so we would help him get up, and he would trot right off out through the barn door, out into the run. All the stud stalls have runs. So he would trot out there and nothing wrong. So this one particular morning, we had a little more trouble than normal getting him up. And so he got up, instead of him trotting off, he walked out the barn door and fell. And so, of course, he couldn't get up. So we called Dr. McCarroll. He had been the vet. He was the vet on Smart Little Lena's mother. So we called him. He come up and he said he's had a massive stroke. And so basically he was paralyzed, laying there. So, he said there's nothing to do. We have to put him down. So I go through the process of calling all the shareholders to tell them of the development. My wife is sitting there on the ground, and that horse's head is in her lap. And I mean, he's paralyzed. And all of a sudden, he raises his head, and he turns around and looks at her like that, and nickers. I mean, it was a hair-raising experience. He's paralyzed, but something gave him the strength to turn around and look up at her and nicker. I mean, it was just a tearjerker,
Right.
But anyway, so we cremated him, and we still have his ashes there in a box there. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. McCarroll's a great guy. I still go see him every Friday.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
He was our breeding vet when we first moved here.
Really?
Yeah.
First two. Hollywood done it too.
Yeah. John knows, Dr. McCarroll knows everybody, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's been around for sure.
If you don't like John McCarroll, you just don't like people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So,
But now you have Smooth as a cat. He's the he's the stud that you have. That is the one, I think.
We were very, again, its timing was just everything. You know, he was Horse of the Year in 2005. He won $500,000.
And Matt Gaines showed him.
Matt Gaines showed him.
Matt Gaines is avoiding me and Tom and Brendan Clark in a ping pong match.
Really?
I just wanted to put that back out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A challenge.
Yeah,
It's
Well,
been
they're
like what?
dodging
It's been
us.
like 6 months at least,
Matt-
right?
It's been like 6 years.
Couple
yeah.
years or
No,
something.
Matt Gaines and Brendan Clark challenged Gunny and I to
Yeah.
ping pong.
Brendan Clark, the bull rider?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ex bull rider?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and they can't.
No, Tom and Gunny are like they're
They're
real
always
good. They're
busy
real
when we
good.
call
Wow.
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, we're, as you can
I
imagine.
thought
we're-
Matt was always up for a challenge, evidently not.
We scared him.
Bless his heart.
Yeah, no, I think he's scared. So,
Bless
but
his
it's
heart.
fine. It's fine.
It's
I mean, it's
sorry,
probably.
sorry, I got sidetracked. Smooth as a cat.
Yeah.
Smooth as a cat.
Yeah.
He's won 500,000. Matt Gaines showed him. Do you own him? Do you own a part of him?
We own him.
That's awesome.
We raised him, and
That is awesome. That's gotta feel something. That's gotta feel cool to have raised a horse that has accomplished as much as he has.
we, he's a phenomenal. This is not by the way, this is not an advertising scheme here. What I'm telling you now, these are facts. The year he was Horse of the Year, we were gone a lot with him, hauling him during breeding season, and there were some times that Matt couldn't go, and so this one particular time we were going to Reno to the Pacific Coast Classic. So I called Tim Smith and asked him if he'd show him. He said, yeah, I'd be happy to. And so naturally, he had never ridden him before. And so, make a long story short, Kyle had gone down, my son, Kyle, had gone down and spent some time with Matt. And Matt showed him kind of how to school him on the flag. We were gone 3 months and he never saw a cow other than the flag.
Yeah.
So Kyle works him the morning of the first go around, and I don't know if you know Tim Smith or not, but he's pretty laid back, pretty conservative. It takes 3 days for him to say 3 words, and so, but he's a great showman.
Great show.
Yeah. So he gets on him. He hasn't worked him or anything, and so he gets on him. He walks him around. He gets off. He adjusts his stirrups. He gets back on him. He rides him around. He adjusts the bridle. He gets back on him. Pretty soon it's time for him to go. So he rides down to the herd. He marks a 223 on him. Wins a go around.
That's
So he
cool.
comes out and he says, Tommy, I don't mind telling you, I was a little nerved up. So anyway, he showed him 2 go rounds of the classic, and then they had like a special event, like the Pacific Coast Stakes, and then they had the finals for each one of those. So he would have shown him 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
2 go rounds, 2 finals. He won every go round. He won every finals.
Wow. Really?
And
pretty
I'd
cool.
never ridden him before. But I mean, that's testimony. Number one, he's a great horse, but it was testimony as to what a great job Matt had done training him.
Yeah.
And so we were gone 3 months without coming home. But what I left out was this was during breeding season. We were breeding a lot of mares, so we would collect him at a vet facility on the road, and then we would take that semen to the airport, fly it home, and then disperse it, breed mares here at home, just like he was here.
Yeah.
And at Reno, especially, there would be days that we would be collecting him at 6 o'clock and showing him at 8. You just don't do that with a stud.
Yeah.
Breeding season,
Yeah.
And so, but he was he had that kind of temperament. And he's just such a blessing to our family. And
he's still
That's
doing
cool.
well.
still doing well. We bred 420 mares to him last year.
Wow.
Yeah. And
And you
Holy
sold some
cow.
lifetime breeding rights to him?
we did. we sold some, but it was different than the shares that Little Lena had. In Little Lena, we sold, or they sold ownership. And Smooth as a Cat, it was just breeding rights. You buy a lifetime breeding, you can breed a mare to him for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And
I think the thoroughbreds did that a lot. Didn't
yes, they did. Yes, and that's where we got that concept.
Right.
It's an easier, just a cleaner cut thing to do. There's no billing of expenses and this and that.
Right.
You know, if you own a share in him, you breed your mare, and there's no expenses.
I mean,
420 mares.
Yeah.
What I got out of that, a lot of that story, Gunny, is that Matt Gaines is a better horse trainer than
Then he is a ping pong player. Yeah.
That's what I got out of that story.
Yeah.
But Matt did a phenomenal job with that horse. And we had 2 studs in a row. We had him and I'm Counting Checks.
Yeah, I'm counting checks. Yeah.
Right. And I'm Counting Checks came along like the next year after Smooth as a Cat. And then about the time that we, by then, Highbrow Cat had been sold and moved. And we sold I'm Counting Checks. So we decided to put all of our interest and energy behind Smooth as a Cat.
Gotcha.
And which brings us to our present place of retirement.
Yeah. How many horses do you own now? You were
Yeah.
talking about retirement at dinner, and you were thinking about embryos and yearlings and weanlings and brood mares. How many head do you have now?
This is just a guess, but I'm going to say we've got. Well, it's a fact that we've got 12 2-year-olds. We have 2 brood mares. We have 2 show horses. And we have 5 embryos going to be born this year.
Cool.
Which cuts down from about 60 that we used to have.
And your 2-year-olds that are in training, are they trained right here at your place?
No.
Where are they,
we used to have a trainer, but now, since we've cut down all of our numbers, we have 3 or 4 different trainers that we send our colts to. And what we try to do, and we're not always right, but we try to match the colt's disposition to the trainer. For example, you wouldn't want to send a little hot, fragile-minded filly to a real aggressive trainer.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the opposite. You wouldn't want to send a real lazy colt to somebody that's too laid back. And so we're not always right, but that's kind of our goal. And but we're to the point now of retirement to where the last phase is kicking in, and by the end of this year we will probably have sold all of our colts. And
Well, I mean, speaking of selling stuff, you think I could get like a syndicated share of Smooth as a Cat for $17.50? I'm friendly.
we'll give that all a consideration at Mare Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be afraid to tell him no, he's used to it.
Yeah.
So things
pretty
are
good.
rolling along. How old is Smooth as a Cat?
22.
Wow.
Golly.
Yep.
It's amazing how time flies.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Unbelievable.
And as far as the studs you're standing, are you standing out any outside studs right now?
No.
So
He's the only horse we have, and we moved him to Weatherford in 2012. By then we had sold I'm Counting Checks, and he was the only horse that we had, and we just thought that it was better than to keep a full breeding staff there, that we would move him to Weatherford Equine. They've done a phenomenal job for us. They have a great conception rate, and so we're just pleased for him to be there.
So what's going on at the ranch right now?
Well, we pay a lot of bills.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of time with my grandson, and we have leased the breeding facilities for this year to Kimberly Howard. I don't know if you know her or not, but she stands she stands some reiners. She stands mostly pleasure horses, a few halter horses. She I think she'll breed 12 studs there. No, I'm sorry, 9 studs there this year. And she'll probably breed 300 mares
Oh wow.
That's
there.
great.
Just there at our facility.
So what's your day consist of now?
You know, Tom, I say this jokingly, I sleep in a little bit and till about 8 o'clock. And I get up and I have breakfast. I return the phone calls from the day before. I walk through the barns and meet with Kyle, my son, and we discuss if there's anything that needs to be addressed. And by then it's lunchtime. And about an hour later, my grandson shows up because it's nap time. And so, and then we take a nap together for a couple hours. And that's just about what we do.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect.
My wife says it's not now when, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
As
really.
far as retiring.
Now, is he into
But-
horses, your grandson?
Or he's only 5.
Has he started?
He has a pony.
Oh,
He
right
loves
on.
that pony. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, he's yeah.
And Kyle's
But-
been super competitive in the
Yeah.
non-pro.
Kyle, yes. Kyle doesn't have the passion for the breeding end of it that we've always had, but he and his wife they show and they both do well. And she has Havy has developed a marketing company, I'm going to say, where she markets all kinds of. I mean, she has clients that she just markets anything that they have. And she's done really well. And Kyle continues to run the ranch duties. And then he shows, but just our numbers have just cut way back.
Right.
And he's going to continue, he and his wife, keeping a couple horses to show for fun. And he has his real estate license. He's had it for 15 years. And so with the real estate market like it is here, it's a big help, big advantage. But horses, he'll never get away from horses. It's in his blood.
Yep.
And he does well and he enjoys it, just in a little different capacity than what we've always done in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it sounds.
Joe, do you think he has any stock to it? Maybe.
Yeah. Be closer to the house.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
putting that out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Fucking-
We enjoy.
This is all I get, Tommy, all the time.
Really?
Yes.
grief.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe is
Yeah.
right. He is a punching bag over there.
Yeah.
They keep
Yeah.
him around just
Wow.
so
Just
they
to
can
punch
feel
him.
good about
Yes.
themselves.
It's for
Yes.
our amusement,
Yes.
and he's,
Yeah.
and it's worth every minute of it.
Yeah. Whatever.
Well, I must say, whenever I first moved into the area, it was the end of 2001, the very end, and just the fresh start of 2002. And it was very neat to drive down 377 and see your fence line.
Yes.
Wow.
See your
Yeah.
entranceway
Well,
Yeah.
with highbrow hickory
Yeah.
and Smart Little Lena sign out front. And I always thought that was so cool to drive by. I wish I would have drove in there and petted Smart Little Lena one time, but I never did. I was certain you were going to shoot me.
yeah, right.
Get off my place. But
That's very kind of you to say that.
it's certainly very cool to drive by that place and see that sign.
Yeah. It's iconic.
And
Yes.
great
Mhm.
foresight to buy a place right on 377, because as we
Yeah.
know, 377 was nothing then like it
No.
is today,
Yeah.
but it was still the main road.
It's amazing since to see the changes that have been made, and especially, and then you get down on 380, just 6 or 7
yeah.
miles south, and it's just amazing the changes that have been made.
I know that I'm pissed off now. I live in Tioga, and I'm pissed off whenever I have to go get on the highway now because there's 50 cars that drive by now. You must be really frustrated trying to get out of your place and getting on 377 now. With how it used to be and how it is
Yeah,
now.
really.
There is a lot of cars that go by.
They're getting ready to put in a stoplight. Do you know where Friendship Road is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to put in a stoplight down there, and they
Yeah.
should. There's more wrecks there
Yeah,
than you
right
can
there.
imagine, And I don't know why, really,
They haven't
done it already.
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
they're getting ready to put in a stoplight. It's been way overdue.
that's good.
Well,
Yeah, right
man,
on.
it's been great having you here.
Yeah,
No,
very
Tom, it's-
entertaining.
hey,
That was cool. Real interesting.
This has been fun, and I mean to relive and revisit and think how fortunate we've been, and we're just blessed every day of what the horse business has done for us, and again, it's just we've lived a dream, you know.
And I'm
It's
sure
fun when
we've-
things work out.
I'm sure we've only scratched the surface of it. I'm sure that we could keep talking for hours, but
That's the greatest part about our business to me is the friends you make over the years.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't even. I was thinking one time, it would be fun to have a party and invite all the people that have worked for me at one point in time or another. Now, there's a few that wouldn't.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
There's
invite
just-
them, right?
Yeah.
Just a few.
There's
Just a few that wouldn't come.
show up.
Oh, that'd be a huge group of unhappy people.
some of them would show up with knives.
Yeah. Yeah. Why are we here again? Yeah.
Oh, but
Yeah.
I'm just-
Maybe not you, but other people that have groomed their help. Yeah, maybe.
Schwartz would come home that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
not Benny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the
Yeah.
number of people,
Yes.
and really, I feel fortunate because
Yeah.
you think about the number of people that have worked for us, with us over the years that we're still friends with. I mean, there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
And the ones that aren't friends, they weren't friends when they left.
Well,
Yeah.
You know?
they
That's
deserve
funny.
to be friends.
That's
Yeah.
funny because I'm really Tom's only friend.
Really?
Yeah.
You're one of the few guys that really knows him and still likes him,
I'm
right?
still
Yeah.
his friend.
That's right.
Talking about all these people that he's friends with, but it's just me and Joe. Isn't it, Tom?
Sebastian. I feel there's a few. I bet there's
Yeah.
a few.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, that's the beauty of this business, though, is it's doing pretty much like you alluded to it earlier. You know, I know going down the road, and it wasn't all roses and sunshine. I mean, there was a lot of 25-degree days, and you know, at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting ready for the halter class. I'm
Yep.
sure that wasn't the best place in the world to be. But, you know, when you look at the whole picture, it was the best place in the world to be.
That's
know?
exactly right. That is exactly right.
So, good times. Well, we're
Yeah,
not gonna,
thank you very much.
Yeah,
for
thanks
taking
again.
the time.
we're not going to let you off with just this one. We're going to have you back on later.
Thanks for the invitation.
I know there's
Yeah.
a bunch more stories that we
We'll
can.
let Chelsea cook dinner again.
Again,
if you come
yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Any day. Any day.
All right. Well,
So we have a party. You have a catering service, right?
Yeah, she
No.
does now.
Not yet.
Yeah,
Close.
She does. Yes, you
Get
do.
there.
Yeah, Chelsea.
all right.
Shriner's cake.
Thanks. It was awesome to have you. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
great
Tom.
show.
Joe, got it.
Yep. Nice to meet you.